Have you ever looked at people who exercise regularly and think to yourself, what's wrong with me? Why can't I get myself to exercise? Am I just lazy? Am I lacking willpower? Well, the answer to that is a resounding no. If you don't exercise regularly, it's not because you're lazy and it's not because you lack willpower. In fact, the only difference between people who exercise and those who don't is simply this. Exercisers have managed to make exercise a habit. That's it. So if you don't presently exercise regularly, consider yourself perfectly normal. Because exercise, as we're going to define it, is actually unnatural. It goes against the very instincts of evolutionary survival. See, here's the thing. When it comes to physical movement, we can define it in one of two ways. It's either activity or it's exercise. So let's begin with a question. What's the difference between activity and exercise? Well, for most of evolutionary history, we had to be physically active just to survive. So basically, we didn't exercise. Life itself was exercise. In fact, with the exception of us modern humans living in industrialized societies, there is not a species on this planet that exercises. But every species on this planet is physically active, whether they choose to be or not. Because without physical activity, there's no survival. To perfectly juxtapose our evolutionary development with modern humans, all we need to do is turn to the numerous studies of modern hunter-gatherers. For example, the Hadza hunter-gatherers from Tanzania, who are probably the best studied, walk between 5 and 9 miles a day. And each day they engage in moderate to vigorous physical activity for about 2 hours. That's it. They do whatever's necessary to survive and no more. In fact, they sit in leisure about 9 to 10 hours a day. So in that regard, the only difference between them and us is environment. They sit around their camp. We sit around our computers. But here's the thing. Hunter-gatherers, like the Hadza, well, all species for that matter, are simply being active. They are not, and I repeat, not exercising. And this is a very critical distinction we need to grasp and remember. Physical activity is movement born out of necessity for survival. Exercise, on the other hand, is voluntary and discretionary physical activity. In other words, exercise is the result of conscious choice, and therein lies the problem. Our bodies cannot function efficiently without regular physical activity. But conversely, our minds never evolved to push us to move unless it was absolutely necessary for our survival or it was in some way enjoyable. Now, we often hear the phrase that exercise is medicine. But you know, the word medicine implies that it's something we take to cure an ill. Now, there is no doubt that regular exercise can cure a list of illnesses. But I think a better way to look at it is this. If we engage in regular physical activity, we won't have to deal with most of the modern illnesses in the first place. So instead, let's look at exercise from the lens of what happens if we live sedentary lives. If we're not physically active, how much vitality do we really have? Are we enjoying the full capability of our bodies? Are we regularly investing in the most valuable thing we own? Let's remember, exercise is a choice. Now, thanks to modern medicine, some of us may manage to avoid all exercise and still live into our 80s and 90s. So exercise is by no means a panacea to living a long life. However, the data overwhelmingly confirm that exercise is the closest thing to a magic bullet when it comes to preventing disease and disability. Not to mention its unequivocal ability to maximize the quality of our lives. And that, of course, raises the big question. How can we get ourselves to exercise regularly when most of us find exercise to be extremely time-consuming and even worse, a painful and unsavory experience? Well, that's the purpose of this series of posts. I am going to show you how you can not only embrace a lifetime of regular exercise, but I'm going to show you how it can become an addiction. Now, ultimately, regular exercise is the result of acquiring the habit of exercise. Now, in order to acquire the exercise habit, we have to initiate a series of behavioral changes and perspectives. In the next post, we're going to look at the 5 stages involved in behavioral change, and then we'll determine in which of those stages you are right now. And then from there, we're going to see how you can move yourself along the path to acquiring the habit and ultimately the addiction of exercise. When it comes to exercise, none of us has to, but every one of us needs to. Exercise is one of the joys of my life. I hope I can make it one of the joys in your life as well. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.